Hey guys, 2005 Subaru Outback needs a left front wheel bearing. Let's get cranking. Take your brakes apart, we need to remove the caliper and the rotor. 17mm caliper bolts. If you do break these caliper bolts off, I'll put a size and dimension for the bolt itself on the screen here so you guys know what to replace it with. Sometimes these bolts will break right off and then you'll have to replace the caliper bracket. It's kind of a pain. It's mostly a northern climate issue. It can happen anywhere, and the reason it does that, the bolt hole that these go through is so precisionally drilled that it's barely bigger than this bolt. So this bolt had anti-seize put on it, and to prevent the problem of this sticking in the caliper and snapping off. I got lucky today. But if you have that issue, you got to replace the caliper bracket and the bolt, and that'll get you back up and running. So you can do this before or after taking the bolts out. Just pry in between the pad and the rotor. That'll help release the piston so you can slide this apart and slide it right back together, no problem. Hopefully your pads don't fall out. If they do, you'll have to just fix that later. I like to use this little bungee cord. I like to hang it up right on the spring. That way you don't have any pressure on this hose. Slide your rotor off. The next thing we're gonna do is take off this axle nut right here. This axle nut is a 32mm. It is staked right here, and that's to prevent it from loosening. You could take a screwdriver and fiddle around and try to pop it back out if you want, but it's not necessary. Just put an impact socket 32mm on here and spin it off. It'll just kind of flatten that out a little bit, but we will once we tighten this back up, restaking it anyway. So even if we restake it in the same spot or in a different spot, it'll have the same effect. So we got the axle nut off. You can see the axle moves freely, which is good. This ABS sensor goes right up, right through the knuckle right here, and it rides on the back of the bearing. If this CV shaft doesn't move freely, when you pull this bearing out, the inside of the CV shaft will go far enough to break this sensor. So if that CV shaft is loose, you're not going to have any problem. This bearing will pop right out. It won't drag that shaft with it and snap off the sensor. So that's the key. So the next thing I'm going to do is remove these 4 bolts. There's one here, one up top, one on the other side, and then one on this side. What I like to do is just take a big old hammer and smack it right on the edge here and try to break it free from the knuckle. Alright, I think it's free. And pull it out. See that sensor I've been talking about? It was locked into the bearing, it would shear this right off. Or you gotta remove that sensor. As rusty as this knuckle is, I know better. If I try to pull that out, there's a good chance I'm gonna damage it, so I just do it this way. To each his own, whichever way you wanna do it. As long as it works for you, that's all that matters. So what I like to do here is just clean that up with a screwdriver. That sticks up 5/1000ths of an inch, maybe a little bit more. So what we want to do is clean this surface all the way around so that our new bearing sits flush and doesn't cause any alignment issues. Okay. In a knuckle bearing situation and a spline situation, my personal favorite is to use grease only. I don't like to use anti-seize on bearings right here, or the threads, or the spline. I think grease is a better solution, but I don't think there's a wrong way. I think something is better than nothing. So, and match them up to your holes right there, and then match up your holes on your bearing. Slide it all together. Get it in there as close as you can. Grease these bolts up. Okay, so I got all 4 bolts in, and now I'm gonna go ahead and tighten all 4 bolts up. Spin this on and get it close. Look up the specification for this nut. Make sure and look up your specific application. So to stake our nut, you can see that little slot right there. Our nut actually went a little bit tighter this time, which doesn't matter or mean anything. So to stake it down, you just take a big screwdriver and give her a couple of whacks and it'll be good as new. I like to go 1, 2 on one side and 1, 2 hits on the other side. Perfect. Okay, let's put our brakes back together. I'm gonna assume that you can handle that at home. One tip I forgot real quick, make sure and spin your wheel when you're done. The dust shield on the back of my rotor is hitting the rotor and making some noise. So I test drove it and heard that noise, so I had to pull it back in, and now I gotta bend it out just a little bit with this pick from the inside. But yeah, give your car a quick spin just to make sure nothing's hitting. You can hear that. Now a lot of times you can do it from right here. Just reach through the wheel, screwdriver, whatever you got handy, your fingers. I mean, I could actually hit this one with my fingers, I think. And you're just adjusting, pushing back a little bit on that shield, and usually that's all it takes. Perfect.